Hello everyone, my name's Tomatoanus, also known as the exception to the big hand, big foot rule. This is a segmented any % speedrun of BioShock Infinite, and I'm gonna explain how the world record holder, Prisoner, beats the game in under 90 minutes. Prisoner both recorded the run for this video and helped with the script to make sure it's all as accurate as possible. This run's done on easy because Prisoner is new to FPS games and still wants to control the action. The main difference on easy is you take less damage and deal more, but there's a little more to it that I'll cover later. The run opens with an unnamed woman asking Booker, the player character, a doozy of a question to open a game with.
Booker, are you afraid of God?
No. But I'm afraid of you.
This is then immediately followed by a quote attributed to R. Lutece, which broaches the topic of the multiverse. This leads to a cutscene where Booker is in a rowboat with a different unnamed woman and an unnamed man doing an Abbott and Costello routine about whether or not Booker helps rowing the boat, but Booker doesn't row. So there's a lot of cutscenes in this game and run, like a lot. There are some that involve skips, time saves, and other oddities, but a lot are just downtime, and in this video will likely be downtime as well where I don't have much to explain. But I'm feeling a bit romantic about speedrunning right now and how some runs allow you to still experience most of the story between all of the speed tech. So rather than fast forward through downtime this video, I'll just provide progress bars and timestamps to skip downtime during cutscenes in between explanations. But first,
come on, grow. Oh, hey, Minnesota guy.
hey Chicago guy, up to your experiments again?
Yeah, bah, get out of here. What have you been up to lately?
Mostly checking out the features on Surfshark, the VPN I installed on her computer.
Oh, I remember these guys.
Yeah, lately I've been browsing like a Bahamian, and by that I mean connecting to servers in places like Albania, Mongolia, and the Bahamas, since YouTube doesn't serve ads in those countries.
Wow, may as well call you Bahama guy.
Don't do that. No, that's a bad idea. We do not want to do that.
Just like how browsing public Wi-Fi without a VPN is a bad idea, right?
Yeah, Surfshark gives me a lot more peace of mind when I try connecting to random neighbors' networks.
Hey, I heard they have a clean web feature now.
You bet. That's in the app and their browser extension, which blocks ads, trackers, malware, and cookie consent pop-ups.
And let me guess, you can get 4 extra months of Surfshark VPN for free when you use the link surfshark.com/tomatovpn or code tomatovpn at checkout.
Uh-huh, and don't forget about the 30-day money-back guarantee. Nice!
Hey Minnesota guy, I got another experiment to try. Pull my finger.
Was something supposed to happen?
I shit myself.
We're never going to get there.
No, I mean, I'd greatly appreciate it if you would assist.
Perhaps you should ask him. I imagine he has a greater interest in getting there than I do.
I suppose he does, but there's no point in asking.
Why not?
Because he doesn't row.
He doesn't row?
No, he doesn't row.
Ah, I see what you mean. We've arrived.
So after not rowing, Prisoner's gotta run up to the lighthouse, echoing the very beginning of the series. As he opens the door, he pays no mind to the note addressed to Booker saying to bring them the girl and wipe away the debt, and similarly ignores the cross-stitched invitations from a self-identifying savior.
Is anyone here? Hello?
At the top of the lighthouse, there's a bell puzzle that he has to do. Prisoner will ring those bells with a fervor that would leave anyone listening for a discernible melody absolutely befuddled. He then has to wait around a bit for the sky to fart red at him a couple times before the top of the lighthouse opens. While he waits, a few things worth pointing out. You can see Prisoner's frame rate in the top left corner. Your FPS is very important in Infinite runs. The game's very reliant on frame rate. Throughout the run, Prisoner will be using hotkeys in his frame rate limiting software to adjust what his frame rate cap is to manipulate the game into desired effects, but for the most part, he keeps it at around 180. You'll also notice a Jay Garrick looking hat in the top left corner next to his frame rate. This is the indicator of a mod he has installed. See, this isn't just an any % run, this is an any % HRH mod run, which allows the installation of the Hill Runner's Hat mod that forces the Hill Runner's Hat to spawn at a specific gear drop. The Hill Runner's Hat is hugely important for speedruns, but has a 1.5 to 2% chance of dropping, with the drop point runners grind for it at otherwise being 30 minutes into the run. The gear gives you a 50% speed boost for 5 seconds every time you break your shield, which is enormous, especially with such an easy trigger condition and especially in a game of this length where you have ample opportunity to take advantage of the boost. Back in the day, you'd have to do a third of the run and hope that you get a lucky drop for Hill Runner's Hat, which honestly isn't all that fun. In 2018, the BioShock Infinite speedrun community decided to allow use of the HRH mod, which makes it a much more tolerable speedrun to grind. The regular any % category still exists, which Prisoner holds the record in as well, but the default and more active category is the one with the HRH mod.
Just stay calm.
So after sitting in the most foreboding dentist chair from hell, Booker is being rocketed to an altitude of over 15,000 feet where he catches a glimpse of Columbia.
Hallelujah.
This is the setting of the game, a flying city that in the game world's history was commissioned by the US government as a display of American and religious exceptionalism. The population of Columbia fell into zealotism with its founder, Father Comstock, who led the city to intervene in the Boxer Rebellion and ultimately secede from the United States, with him shaping the city into his image of a perfect society. That all happened a decade ago, with the city celebrating the 10th anniversary of its secession during the events of the game. Personally though, the most physically impressive thing about this flying city is that a parachuting shuttle can precisely and presumably consistently land in a dedicated spot. After some subtle messaging regarding Comstock's supposed salvation, Prisoner will gain control of Booker, but he won't quite have full control yet. His speed is going to be capped pretty severely as he walks to a baptism you're forced to accept to progress. Thankfully, you can travel slightly faster when limited like this by chaining jumps together. It's not quite bunny hopping. If you spam jump, you actually travel slower. Every time he lands, he needs to build momentum back up before he jumps again, so there's a bit of rhythm to it, which ultimately saves about 1 second through this whole intro segment. He can't quite jump and turn as he goes down the spiral stairs up ahead, but otherwise he's making sure to jump as he goes downstairs to maximize the amount of time he's in the air and traveling at the fastest speed, like how he does with the stairs right after this spiral set. The run has almost entirely been cutscenes so far, which might seem really insufferable from a speedrunner's perspective, but Prisoner said that he actually doesn't mind it since he doesn't reset much. Dude's just good enough at the game where he's really consistent and gets pretty good times on average and largely does no resets. Speaking of cutscenes, after Prisoner tried to peep at the preacher's dogs, we have a mandatory one where Booker's nearly drowned, we hear a voice clamoring about a deal Booker's made, and we catch a glimpse of Columbia attacking New York City. At least that's what I remember.
Will you be cleansed, brother? Hey. I baptize you in the name of our prophet, in the name of our founders, and the name of our Lord. I don't know, brothers and sisters, but this one doesn't look clean to me.
Who's there? Who's there?
Bring us the curve and wipe away the debt!
Now this is what KPC's name really stands for. Can't Stop Partying to Caramel Dancin'. After visiting KPC's place and also having a grossly sexy statue of Benjamin Franklin staring down at us, Prisoner will gain control and again have his movement speed limited, meaning he'll take to jumping in a rhythm again to get away from Comstock's version of the Holy Trinity as quickly as possible. He'll jump off a rock in the bush at the top of the stairs to again jump from a higher elevation and stay in air longer. He'll then do the first skip of the run. Through the doors, you normally have to wait for the ground and gate to lower, but Prisoner will instead jump around the invisible wall blocking him to get down and save about 12 seconds. You have to wait a little bit before jumping though, otherwise you'll hit a death plane and get teleported back, so he uses the fourth note that the violin plays in the score as the audio cue for when to jump. Up ahead, there's another spot you're supposed to wait at, this time to watch a parade that touts a miracle child, the Lamb, born to Comstock and his late wife, Lady Comstock. But I honestly hate parades. Can't stand them, never have, so Prisoner is going to help me out by doing a slip clip to skip it. This game naturally determines locations of everything with an XYZ coordinate system. If there's a wall or object though that isn't aligned parallel to the coordinate grid, like it's askew in the XY plane for instance, and you also have over 120 frames per second, physics get funky when you touch the wall/object. For this slip clip, Prisoner has to crouch and turn to be looking at a specific angle, and by then just holding right, he slides on through the barrier and can jaywalk across the sky. Slip clips are foundational to many skips and glitches, but they're also FPS dependent, with time save varying based on the FPS you perform them at, like with Parade Skip, which can save somewhere between 25 and 35 seconds. So the prolonged intro of BioShock Infinite's kinda approaching its conclusion, where after a fair bit more running, we'll arrive at a carnival. This serves as a tutorial of sorts, where you're able to play carnival games that teach you the basics of combat, such as shooting and using Vigors. It's after the carnival that there's then a bit more running before you arrive at the actual end of the intro, where you win a raffle, do a quick time event to choose whether or not you're racist, and get thrown into combat. Prisoner is going to skip all of this though and go straight to the end of the level by doing Raffle Skip, which saves about 4 minutes. When you play this game on a high frame rate, you're able to jump and land on things you're normally not able to land on. Prisoner uses scroll wheel to spam jump to land and hop across these railings you normally can't land on and up onto collision out of bounds. He can then run and drop into the next area, forcing it to load, with this being where you first meet the fireman enemy type. He skips some triggers in doing this, meaning the fireman never spawns. Usually the fireman drops the Devil's Kiss Vigor, but since he never spawned, he never drops it, so Prisoner doesn't get the chance to pick it up. That's actually faster though, I'll explain why later. So once he loads into this next area, he dismisses a few DLC pop-ups. He has DLC installed. More specifically, he has all of it installed. The pop-ups are because this room is where you can claim a bunch of bonuses for having DLC, including multiple infusions which you can use to upgrade your health, shield, or salts, with salts being what you expend to use a Vigor. He chooses to upgrade his salts every time, then grabs a gold bar worth 500 silver eagles and 2 pieces of gear, this game's form of passive abilities. The first is Sugar Rush, making you move 50% faster for 3 seconds whenever you eat a snack, and the second is Fleet Feet, which increases your movement speed when you move left, right, or back. After he takes the mandatory shield upgrade from the woman who sounds eerily like the woman from the rowboat, he'll eat the hot dog on the counter for the Sugar Rush speed boost and guzzle a likely warm beer in the hallway back here to re-up the boost. Because of Sugar Rush, he can get to these hooks faster than intended and can leap past the ship you normally have to wait for, saving a few seconds. Notice the gold skin on the machine gun he grabs here. The skin is from one of the DLCs, with it also giving the machine gun a 25% damage upgrade out the gate. He machine guns a skylight to drop down and pick up a Devil's Kiss Fireball Vigor that spawns here. Picking up a Vigor from a spawn like this as opposed to the first available spot like the fireman fight we skips an animation introducing the Vigor that typically lasts about 20 seconds. Inside the house here, he shoots in 2 different spots, with a woman randomly running into the second spurt. The first shot manipulates the police waiting outside into opening the door, and the second shot makes them open the door sooner, skipping going the long way around. He'll smash another glizzy that's chilling on a nearby trash can, real sanitary, and I'm sure you might have noticed by now, but you need a Terrar-sized appetite to speedrun this game. There's persistent food spawns all over this game, with Prisoner hitting up any along the route for a quick bite to regain his boost. You'll notice he often jumps at the end of boosts, which is to carry the boost momentum a little farther rather than slow down immediately due to being on the ground when the boost ends. Right now he's solely boosting with Sugar Rush, which only lasts for 3 seconds. Sprinting with Sugar Rush has you move about 1.5 times faster than the normal sprint speed, and walking with it has you move about 2.25 times faster than the normal walk speed, which, funny enough, is very slightly faster than sprinting with the boost. This is why you'll often see him walk while he's boosted. You can tell whether he's walking or sprinting in any given moment based on whether or not his gun's in the ready position. Because the Sugar Rush boost is so short and the speed difference is so minimal, it's not the end of the world if he's sprinting or walking during the boosts for now. A lot of it matters on where he's physically at in the level, with jumping at boost's end wherever possible being much more important than trying to cancel your sprint every time. Whether he sprints or walks will matter much more later on when he has the Hill Runner's hat though. That's the gear that the mod is installed for, which also gives a speed boost that stacks with Sugar Rush, and walking is much faster with the stacked boosts. Anyway, right now he's about to fight an enemy that uses the Murder of Crows Vigor, with Prisoner standing in a specific spot to manipulate the guy into always going to the same spot, where Prisoner lays down 2 Devil's Kiss traps. The 2 traps one-shot the dude, who drops the Murder of Crows Vigor upon dying, which Prisoner doesn't pick up because, like Devil's Kiss, he'll get it later to avoid watching the long animation. Here he'll down a hot dog and Oinker was saving for later, then head outside where he'll hop across some hooks to the end of this area, which you'll notice he typically shakes his camera when jumping onto hooks. Normally you're locked into an animation when you jump on a hook, but shaking leaves your camera unlocked, allowing him to pre-aim at his next destination. This loading screen brings us to the Monument Island Gateway area, which is the last area in the Welcome to Columbia split. This game doesn't really have clear-cut chapters to cross off throughout the run, so instead I'll be using the split names Prisoner uses since I think they're a suitable replacement. Prisoner shoots any enemies who wander in his path so he can check them for snacks to activate Sugar Rush, but also because cotton candy really does hit different when you eat it off the corpse of a man who was saving it for their child waiting at home. Here's the first instance of the Skyline, the main mode of transport in Columbia, with Prisoner 360ing onto it to show off. While riding, it's sometimes faster to jump ahead on the track to save a little more time like he does here. Up ahead, he has to hop off the rail to pull a lever to move a cargo box blocking the way. He's going to do a glitch called Cargo Boost, where he'll jump onto the rail in a pretty precise spot ahead of the box, which gets him stuck in the cargo box and shoots him forward really fast to a spot way ahead on the rail. Since he's here early, the dismount onto this gunship breaks, landing him on an invisible floor where he runs straight to the next part of the level, where he'll reset from checkpoint as soon as he hits the checkpoint update. He's now going to go for a lengthy elevator ride, with Comstock talking to Booker via a video screen on the side of a big airship next to us.
Need to head to the roof. Take that skyline to Monument Island.
Wait, hold on. Why is the Comstock video replaced with a photo of me? Never mind, it blinked. Why is the Comstock video replaced with a video of me? Comstock talks to Booker during this elevator ride about Booker's past, but I guess Prisoner replaced the Comstock video with footage I'm not sure how he got. Oh, and there go my glasses. After the elevator, Prisoner will have to hop to the big airship that the video is playing on the side of. He's actually supposed to do a combat when he gets down there in a moment, but by throwing a Devil's Kiss trap through a doorway to land inside the airship, some enemies will blow up right when they spawn. Those initial enemies dying on spawn causes the game to think the fight is already over, unlocking the door inside right away. Also, 1, why am I spinning? 2, where did my shirt go? And 3, why does it now look like I'm stuck in the Phantom Zone? The elevator ride is almost over, with an invisible wall blocking him from leaving the elevator too soon. Because of Cargo Boost, the invisible wall disappears slightly sooner, and since he restarted from checkpoint before the elevator, the wall will disappear an additional half second earlier. These two coupled let him outrun the big airship, able to hop on instantly rather than wait a few seconds.
You've come to lead my land astray, but thy crook is bent and thy path.
So in the story, the current objective is to get to Monument Island, where the supposed girl we need to get to wipe away our debts is located. After Booker sets the Zeppelin's course to Monument Island, Comstock shows up in person to personally declare war on Booker.
I'm just a prophet, so I don't have to. Amen.
Prisoner's gonna drop out the slow to open bay doors, leisurely mowing a dude down to amuse himself and checking his pocket for coin while waiting, before then leaping to the skyline as soon as it's visible.
Out of here.
He's then just a leap ahead and an eating some cigarettes for a boost away from finishing up this first split of the run. So when you leap onto a hook, there's a small running animation before the actual jump. All this animation really does though is delay your jump to the hook, so here Prisoner hugs the wall when leaping since the game considers hugging the wall as there being an obstacle in front of you, so the animation is skipped and he leaps instantly.
Wonder why they got it locked up in this place.
As he runs through the lobbies of Monument Island, he has a consistent food route he follows with the set food spawns. It was around here when I asked Prisoner if he has a favorite food item in the game, and he picked cotton candy. Might also explain some of the things I said earlier. He has a sizable elevator ride ahead of him, and at the top he's going to do a variation of a slip clip called a wall zip. I talked earlier about how slip clips allow you to clip into certain walls and objects based on their alignment with the coordinate grid. If you clip into a wall like this while not touching the ground, the game will put you on top of the wall. Prisoner is first going to clip into a railing, which moves him horizontally off the ground, causing him to wall zip to the top of the railing. He then slip clips into an invisible wall above the railing, changes angle, and clips into the nearby curved wall to wall zip to the top of the wall, where he moves and jumps to do one final wall zip. Running above the hall containing the cutscene trigger for seeing Elizabeth the first time, he spans a gap missing invisible floor with another variant of slip clipping called an elevator. This is where if a wall is sloped, you're able to repeatedly do tiny zips to slowly climb by moving into it while not touching the ground. It looks like you're just jumping to slowly climb a sloped wall, but it is a series of tiny zips. He drops down after the elevator, then does another wall zip to get on top of the wall above the girder, where he does another elevator to span a gap without floor. Once back on solid, invisible ground again, he just has two spots he has to jump at, but otherwise can run to the end of this out-of-bounds stretch. Prisoner's been doing a lot of manipulation to his frame rate so far, with each elevator having a frame rate they're most consistent and fastest at, and the ones he just did being around 360. Those weren't entirely the best first examples of elevators though. He'll be using them a lot more later, but more for their actual climbing ability rather than for just not falling. He then has a quick jaunt outside in the nipple-hardening wind before entering the unskippable cutscene of us being introduced to Elizabeth. At least for now, the cutscene's unskippable. Maybe one day someone will figure it out. Maybe it'll be you.
Hello. Hey! Knock it off! Stop it! Will you stop it? Not here to hurt you.
Who are you?
My name is DeWitt. I'm a friend. I come to get you out of here.
Get away! Are you real?
I'm real enough.
He's coming. You've gotta go.
Why?
You don't want to be here when he gets here. Just a minute, I'm getting dressed.
Get you out of here.
There's no way out. Trust me, I've looked. Stop it, you're too impatient. That's enough.
What about this?
What about it?
This is the way out, isn't it?
What are you... Give it to me.
After regaining control, he still has a bit of waiting to do, passing the time by keeping the doctor away for today, then dancing on Elizabeth's head. After Elizabeth rudely shuts the door on Booker, Prisoner will be able to follow. They're gonna run through the same hallway that he was on top of when out of bounds, and funny enough, at the end of it, he's gonna do another wall zip in the same spot as earlier. Songbird, this game's big daddy, is now smashing into the tower periodically, staggering you each time. However, if you jump just before the collision, you get slowed down less. This actually lets you outpace Elizabeth with just 3 jumps, when she's actually supposed to be way ahead of you. Reminder that his regular frame rate is around 180, but he adjusts it depending on the situation to force the game to behave certain ways. This applies to slip clips, wall zips, and elevators, but extends beyond those to more mundane things as well. BioShock Infinite runners have hotkeys bound in their frame rate limiting software to change what their frame rate is. Generally, the more FPS you have, the easier it is to get stuck on collision when running around. More FPS, more fucky game. For this upcoming clip and pretty much every slip clip in the game, more frames makes the clipping faster and easier, with Prisoner having his frame rate in the 600s. He actually aims down sight for this to slightly lower his FOV and slightly improve his FPS to clip even faster, with him doing the same exact clips and zips as before, but with a giant robot bird now trying to destroy the building, and Elizabeth now following as an AI companion, which causes a very big performance hit. He jumps the opposite direction he headed last time he was up here, which loads him into an area with some stairs he heads up to find that Elizabeth somehow beat him up here. She must have magic powers or something, especially with how the door is visually glitchy here, popping open and closed. After gaining control on the other side of the door, Prisoner resets from checkpoint. Normally you move a lot slower while on this walkway since you're being buffeted by the wind, though resetting to checkpoint gives you your speed back, letting you just stride past Elizabeth as she endures her climb. So Elizabeth's been trapped in this tower her whole life, which is why she chose to flee with Booker since he had the key to leave. The escape, isn't going too well, with there being an auto-scroller / cutscene here where you watch the Monument Island Tower get destroyed by Songbird and a bunch of other things getting wrecked in the process. Though Prisoner doesn't move his camera around at all here, just takes a moment to chill, so this cutscene is funnily uncinematic at times. This wraps up the Monument Island split and will bring us to the Battleship Bay split. While this plays out, I've got some business to address. Back in my original BioShock video, I made a joke about upper body strength, and my friend Blood Thunder had a response and a challenge while watching the video on stream. Moving to a specific position where we'll stand and watch a child struggle with their underdeveloped upper body strength. It still ends up being better than most people watching this video can do though, I guess. We position.
Alright. Let's prove a point real quick. Alright, you've been challenged, Mr. Tomato. Let's see you do it.
I ended up giving BT an IOU for one pull-up video since I was injured at the time, but to this day, I've yet to pay my debt. Well, today, I settled the score.
Mr. DeWitt! Swing at the curb and wipe away the debt!
Anna? Anna? Anna?
No, it's me, Elizabeth. You all right?
Where am I?
Back in the
Battleship
land of
Bay
the
is what Prisoner believes to be the hardest level in the run right now, opening with the first heavy reset point. After raiding picnic baskets on the beach, the ever-ravenous Prisoner is going to do a super jump. Prisoner's going to hop up on top of the changing room, crouch with his head under the boardwalk, and spam jump. This causes you to basically bounce between the ceiling and floor, and when you're playing with a high frame rate, the game keeps adding velocity to unstick you from the ceiling and floor. He'll time his exit from under the boardwalk to launch up and out of bounds, though the exact vector of the jump isn't exactly controllable. He builds momentum both vertically and horizontally, so it can get a bit chaotic at times, like getting launched really far the wrong direction and then having to run a ton. On a launch, he's aiming to land on the boardwalk directly above him. He ended up getting a huge super jump in a pretty ideal direction, probably because of how good his camera lineup was, placing him not far from his destination, an out-of-bounds wall that's slightly sloped, our first proper elevator spot. Again, elevators are moving into a sloped wall while off the ground, causing you to do a bunch of tiny wall zips that raise you up. He platforms up some weird collision, and up ahead will jump into the void to load in an area. His positioning is pretty precise here though, placing him in the exact spot a wall will load in, which functions as a wall zip, raising him to the top of the wall, out of bounds in this next area of the level. He swerves right to deload an area up ahead so the ceiling isn't solid and he can drop back in bounds there. Dropping in there teleports Elizabeth into the trigger for required dialogue, where a woman mistakes Elizabeth for someone named Annabelle, and Elizabeth is like, yo, no, my name's Elizabeth. While they chat, Prisoner doubles back to go grab the Hill Runner's hack gear, whose effect is that you get a 50% speed boost for 5 seconds whenever your shield is broken. Again, this always spawns here because of the HRH mod allowed by the BioShock Infinite speedrun community. He walks past the gear into the hall to deload the area where the woman's chatting, forcing the dialogue to finish. He can now turnstile towards progress, having saved a few seconds over waiting for the dialogue normally.
Park's closing, everyone. Yeah.
Coming up is a decision cutscene where Booker can get stabbed in the hand, because turns out that woman confusing Elizabeth with Annabelle was confirming their identities for an ambush. Prisoner's going to skip the cutscene and ensuing combat with Ticket Booth Jump, which is the hardest skip in the game. The goal is to pretty much climb up onto the edges above the room and jump to behind a gate that unlocks after the combat, though you're really close to the ceiling, so you're very limited in how high you can jump. He first has to climb up on top of a lamp, which requires him to pretty much elevator up the tiny slopes of it. After then hopping up onto ledges, he needs to jump to cut the corner to reach behind the locked door. This jump to cut the corner is super precise, the most precise trick in the game in fact. For some reason, the tight jump is most consistent with an FPS in the 200s, with Prisoner swapping to around 230 shortly after climbing the lamp. After nailing it first try, he can now make his way towards the gondola ride that will carry him to the door to finish up both this area and Split, but he first takes a quick detour to aggro an enemy to have them race Elizabeth to the gondola. Who do you want to win? I'm Team Elizabeth. In the story, now that Booker's rescued Elizabeth, they're making their way across Columbia to the First Lady airship, which they're planning to hitch a ride on to escape from Columbia and fly to Paris. Worth calling out is that, for the most part, whenever you skip a cutscene that requires a decision of you, the game will default to one of the decisions for you. For example, in the ticket booth cutscene at the start of the ambush, if you don't choose to pull out your gun, Booker gets stabbed in the hand. The game defaulted to this decision, so his hand will be wounded and get bandaged in this cutscene where Elizabeth grapples with the fact Booker just killed a bunch of dudes. But I'm not sure what she's on about. Booker's been on his best behavior since they met, leaping 30 feet in the air from under a boardwalk, scaling a vertical wall, even refusing to pay for a ticket because Booker insists that he is a sovereign citizen with the right to travel. Hasn't hurt a fly. Anyway, you're probably wondering why Elizabeth looks like Booker let a real nasty one rip the moment they closed the cabin door. That dude Prisoner had her race is actually still on the gondola behind the door to the cabin, so Elizabeth is still considered in combat, and she's stuck in her combat face in addition to her face animating for the cutscene. Taking the detour to initiate that race doesn't lose as much time as it could have, because when the gondola door opens here, the dude will break Prisoner's shield to give him his first instance of the Hill Runner's hat boost, which again is a 50% boost that lasts 5 seconds. And now, eat banana here. So at the start of Soldier's Field, bear down, there's a pretty cool skip Prisoner really likes. There's a gate that'll close when you either look at it or get too close, and you then have to make Booker lift it up for Elizabeth to walk under. Prisoner has other plans though. He drinks his little soda pop that always spawns in this side hallway for the sugar rush boost, and dashes for the gate, looking down to avoid the look trigger and crouching under the gate as it closes from him hitting the volume trigger. This actually traps Elizabeth behind the gate, though Booker doesn't seem to notice. He'll keep yapping as normal. Prisoner veers right after the gate here, checking the trash for any goodies, and choking down a dog just sitting there at the carnival stand begging to get eaten. He then does a slip clip up here into a building to get out of bounds, where he then does another slip clip through an invisible wall onto some collision. From there he can jump back in bounds to a different loading zone, taking a fall in the process which breaks his shield for a Hill Runner's hat boost. He also grabs the shotgun right after the area loads in. This all saved about 2 minutes and skipped a cutscene where Elizabeth shows off her ability to create tears, so in the speedrun, the most magical thing Elizabeth has done is still just teleporting ahead of us once. He starts an arena here by Devil's Kiss trapping a group of enemies, which also ignites an oil patch before using the DLC upgraded shotgun and laying a trap for a guy who will jump down. He runs into the ablaze oil to break his shield for another HRH boost, collaterals 4 dudes in 1 shot, reloads for a straggler, and looks up to spawn in a crow enemy that he'll take care of with 1 trap and a shotgun shell. A turret shoots him during this and breaks his shield, but the turret actually doesn't count as a combatant in this contest, and the conflict is considered correctly completed when the crow character croaked. He pulled a lever to clear boxes on the skyline with Elizabeth reappearing after, and he now loots the murder of Crow's Vigor the crow guy dropped, which he picks up animation free, along with some money and health from the crow guy's box. The cargo boxes take a while to move, so he uses this time to loot. He's specifically looking for RPG ammo, since the game drops ammo for weapons a little before you get them for the first time. Since Prisoner has full health right now, having at least 4 RPG ammo is important for an upcoming piece of tech called Death Warping. More on that soon. Overall, Prisoner found 2 RPG ammo. 2 RPG ammo. He swaps the machine gun for the RPG and uses it to break his shield for a boost and try to lower his health as much as possible. Lowering his health is important for the imminent Death Warping tech. So this game, like the original BioShock, has an iframe system where when your health is lowered to 1, you're invulnerable for a few seconds. It also has something Prisoner referred to as damage protection, which in short makes it really hard to die. Whenever your shield breaks, ensuing attacks deal way less damage, and on top of that, sometimes you have a few seconds of iframes to deal with. It seems a bit counterintuitive, but by delaying instances of damage from one another, like for example delaying between repeated RPG shots, you actually take a lot more damage than if you spammed shots. Alternatively, you can reset from checkpoint to remove the damage protection, which is what Prisoner does here to remove the protection lingering from outside, since he wants to lower his health as quickly as possible. He'll then boost again, which will also lower him to 1 HP and give him iframes. He waits for the iframes to wear off from getting down to 1 HP, jumps at the locked door while the boost is still active, and kills himself on it, flinging his body through the door to hit a trigger that unlocks the door. This is called a Death Warp, which has the added benefit that whenever you die and respawn, your ammo resets alongside your health. As mentioned in the intro, he's playing on easy, meaning he gets more ammo back when he dies, so he spawns with 5 RPG ammo. He reset from checkpoint to again remove damage protection so he gets to 1 HP quickly, and after the iframes wear off, he jumps and flings his shambling corpse through a door to hit a respawn trigger for another Death Warp, but not too far to hit a lengthy dialogue trigger. Unfortunately, he has to double back before heading towards progress because Elizabeth won't unlock the next door for him otherwise. Death Warping doesn't work with every door because for some there aren't any sort of triggers for him to hit on the other side. So we're at the Hall of Heroes to get the shock jockey Vigors so we can summon the next gondola. If Booker could fly like Jack from the original BioShock, then you could skip all of this and most of Soldier's Field bear down, but he can't fly. So there's one more Death Warp here that he's setting up for. First he opens this door to hit the respawn trigger for after the Death Warp, then Death Warps this gated door to hit a trigger and unlock it. After respawning past the door he opened a moment ago, he backtracks through the door he just Death Warp unlocked.
What just happened?
Down this hall, he'll hit a trigger that spawns this area's boss, Slate, as if you just defeated him, then turn around to head back to the area he was just in to talk to Slate. This series of Death Warps skipped pretty much all of the Hall of Heroes segment, including the different battle reenactments and encounters with Slate, and overall saved about 8 minutes or so. In the lore of the speedrun, Booker and Elizabeth happen upon this super melodramatic dude shouting about the Wizard of Oz, with Prisoner choosing to spare him because it's 11 seconds faster than killing him. After this cutscene, Prisoner grabs the shock jockey Vigor, which is required to progress to the next area. This serves as a good example of one of those animations we typically skip by picking up the Vigors in locations beyond their initial spawn. All the doors leading to the exit are now open, so it's time to backtrack through the Hall of Heroes back to Soldier's Field bear down. He'll boost the whole way with HRH and loot containers and enemies for more ammo and food for the Sugar Rush boost. Like I mentioned earlier, HRH boost stacks with Sugar Rush, so when he has both of them, he runs very fast. It's when the boosts are stacked that the difference between walking and sprinting gets pretty sizable, so you'll see him walk almost all the time when he's stacking boosts. Outside, he has a little downtime where he has to wait for the skyline to become interactable, so he takes this time to clean up some enemies and loot their bodies for ammo and coin. In all, he nets 3 RPG ammo here, plus 2 extra RPG ammo that spawn next to the initial RPG pickup, which he left for now in case he didn't have any ammo. To leave, he's going to go and stand on the very corner of a railing to be able to leap way ahead on the skyline the moment it's interactable. You have to stand on the very corner of the ledge though to see the interact prompt while standing still. If you're a little back from the ledge, you have to be moving to see it. After making my stomach drop a couple times, he leaps back on solid ground where he kills, consumes, and careens towards the bucking Bronco Vigor, which lifts enemies off the ground. After intentionally going slow here, he'll reset from checkpoint. This makes an invisible wall blocking you disappear early, so he can immediately run out of the elevator after pressing the button and save a few seconds. Now that he has Shock Jockey from the Hall of Heroes, he can fix and pull the lever that summons another damn gondola, and while it's coming down, he has to fight some enemies. He'll first prepare by laying down some Devil's Kiss traps where some enemies will hop off the skyline, and use some more of the downtime looting a house that has a bit of a reputation for hosting swingers.
Dude, somebody is just hoarding pineapples in this house. What the fuck? I've never seen so many pineapples before. There's pineapples in everything. What the fuck was that?
What did that teach you?
There's a world of
Prisoner's gonna do some skeet shooting by shotgunning some rockets coming from the first enemy gunship as it flies in. He'll then leap aboard once the gunship's in range to clear out the enemies with a technique banned from the Olympics, pressing reload after every shotgun blast to shoot faster. He likes to hang on the hooks when possible when using the shotgun because he likes the gun spin animation, as long as he doesn't sit too long. The second gunship flies right overhead, with Prisoner stunning both enemies on it so they don't fall off to their death, which is something they love to do. The plan is to kill these guys later and loot their bodies for food, hopefully. He'll pair that with an HRH boost to launch himself from the gunship to the gondola, and skip the final waiting of its arrival. There are other enemies spawning that he has to take care of for the combat though before he can leap to the gondola. They're super easy to take care of, with Prisoner just standing in one spot here and waiting for the 5 of them to spawn and zip to their doom. While Prisoner waits here for them to all spawn, I'd just like to say to everyone watching that I hope you're all doing well. If you're not, then please remember, as always, that no feeling is final and that there is a tomorrow. Whatever's going on, what's keeping you up at night, what's steering your mind places it shouldn't be, those things cannot take away the fact that the sun will rise tomorrow and you will be here for it. Those feelings and thoughts, they do not define you. They're a matter of where you are right now, rather than who you are. And even if it's long and hard and you don't feel like you're getting anywhere, you are. You just don't realize it yet. Someday you'll look back and understand just how far you've come. And when you do, make sure you give yourself credit for the hard work, rather than the media you consume. Music, movies, videos, whatever. They didn't live a day in your life. You're the one who got yourself through it all. So again, please remember, no feeling is final. Back to the run, he's about to leap back up to the gunship as the final on-land enemy dies to a trap, and he takes care of the dudes who have been enjoying the luxuries of their couples cruise. After killing them and at a specific rock in the gunship's rocking animation, Prisoner eats any food on the bodies, breaks his shield, and full sends it to land on the gondola, landing and asking Elizabeth to lockpick the door fast enough to skip fighting a motorized Patriot. This is called Patriot Skip, which was found this January and saves about 20 seconds on top of the time saved from skipping waiting for the gondola. He has a little time to kill, which he'll spend by shooting the ground, waiting out his damage protection, and shooting once more to get down to 1 HP, ready for another death warp. This time, instead of dying to send his body through a door, he just has to die after hitting a respawn trigger at a specific point in the gondola ride, which respawns him on the platform at the top of the ride and saves about 25 seconds of gondolaing. He shoves himself into the front of the cabin to normalize his position and will kill himself once this section of cable crosses the bottom of the window. After Elizabeth injects Booker with Lord knows what substance she gets from who knows where, Prisoner immediately makes Liz shake her head by standing up too fast and shooting an explosive at his feet to boost to an elevator. This elevator brings us up to the First Lady airship, which is Booker and Elizabeth's intended means of escape, with Elizabeth believing that the plan is for them to escape to Paris. She's unaware, however, of Booker's debt that he needs to wipe away. Prisoner shoots right under his feet to lower his health as much as possible heading into the cutscene in the ship, since he has another death warp in the next level. Pretty much any time he's shooting right under his feet, it's to prepare for a death warp. If he's just trying to break his shield for the HRH boost, his shots will be a bit more in front of him. So here we have a couple cutscenes back to back. The first, Elizabeth learning of Booker's intentions and knocking out the man who's been shot and lit on fire multiple times with the single thwack of a monkey wrench.
Time to study things like geography.
I owed money, and there's a fellow who... He offered to wipe away my debt in exchange for you. Come on, everything's gonna be okay. Will you just turn around and talk to me and we can...
This leads to a loading screen for the next split, which starts with the second of the two cutscenes, which, gonna be real, I do have a few genuine questions about this cutscene. First is that Elizabeth sees a ship of the Vox Populi fly in, with the Vox Populi being the revolutionary opposition to Comstock, fighting for the oppressed. Naturally, Elizabeth is fearful of the group that opposes her entire upbringing and flees, though right now, where is she physically fleeing to? Like, is she docking the airship and running off of it? I feel like that's the reasonable assumption to make, but does that mean she docks this ship and flees all within eyesight of the Vox Populi who board our ship shortly after? Or did she dock it and sneak off without them noticing before they landed and boarded us? Does that mean she docked in an area with sufficient cover, or did they spot her and there was a foot chase? But there's zero indication of any Vox encounter with Elizabeth in the ensuing dialogue. I don't know, just a few too many assumptions required for my liking. Okay, next question. So to wake up Booker, one of the Vox holds Booker out the open door of the airship for fresh air, with Booker coming to as they pass over a labor camp that's solely imprisoning people of color, with a handyman enemy standing watch. So did this handyman not see the dude with Vox Populi face paint holding Booker out of the First Lady airship? Would it not be cause enough for him to, I don't know, just jump up into the ship, especially since handymen are very capable of jumping great distances? But more so to all of this, why the fuck is Daisy and the Vox Populi flying this incredibly high-profile airship directly over a labor camp? Would they not want to, I don't know, have even the slightest bit of discretion? Anyway, this cutscene establishes Daisy and the Vox Populi as forces fighting for the rights of the oppressed against Comstock and his enforced racial hierarchy. They've commandeered the First Lady airship to now serve as their med bay, but Daisy tells Booker that she'll give him back the airship if he can go and get a bunch of guns for them from a gunsmith down in Finkton. Getting down to Finkton is pretty easy, with Daisy giving Booker the push he needs to get there instantly.
Get our guns from him, and you shall have your ship back.
When he gains control, Prisoner boosts with his third remaining rocket and starts making his way through Finkton. He's going to do a pretty cool jump at the top of the stairs here where he skips along the top of a tank to reach the walkway over here where he instantly kills himself with his last rocket. This respawns him a little forward on the path, though the main motivator for this death is to replenish his ammo. Reminder, when you die, your ammo resets to a set value unless you had more than that, but when playing on easy like he is and I brought up in the intro, that set ammo value is pretty high, so he now has 4 RPG ammo. Here he's supposed to open a big gate on the left and see Elizabeth getting kicked off a ship as a stowaway, but instead he elevators up this pole, boosts, and jumps around the corner to skip the gate, saving about 8 seconds. He's now chasing Elizabeth despite her not being spawned in, with Booker making the assumption that she's throwing tears into other dimensions at him because he saw her teleport twice, and that means she must be magic. The Fleet Feet gear is super useful with tears, with him walking sideways to mitigate the big slowdown of walking through the balloons. He's gonna die to refresh ammo as he waits for the next tear to close, but because Elizabeth isn't near to pick up Booker and he's far away from a respawn point, he instead revives on the spot. After the train tear, he'll loop around a corner on the right, eat some food a worker stored in their desk for later, and double boost walk outside to the next combat arena where Elizabeth spawns in and we've got to rescue her. He leaps to the skyline from behind a box to skip the running leap animation and focuses these 3 enemies to start, which spawns a gunship faster and gets an enemy to jump down to be killed rather than still riding the skyline. For the gunship, he'll shock the turret to stun it, so when he throws a Devil's Kiss trap at it, the turret doesn't shoot it out of the air. The guy he's about to kill on the gunship always spawns with the volley gun, which is the best weapon in the run. It has a huge clip, does a lot of damage, basically one-shotting all basic enemies on this difficulty, and can be used to break your own shield. Rather than follow Elizabeth around on the skyline, Prisoner heads straight to the finish line of this section, a volume trigger that starts a cutscene where a handyman shows up and gives Booker his 3rd or 4th concussion of the run. After some help from Elizabeth, she and Booker will then be working together again, with Booker serving as a means to an end for Elizabeth.
Surprises to the king warrior amongst the lesser
I'm slipping!
Do not attempt to follow me, Mr. DeWitt.
Elizabeth, I've made an arrangement to get our airship back.
You can get us out of here.
Yes, I just need to supply enough weapons to arm an entire uprising.
And where will we get these weapons? From one of our many friends and allies?
A gunsmith in Finkton. Should be a walk in the park. What do you say?
At the end of this cutscene, Prisoner will partially regain control before the game unfreezes the camera, so he can look down and shoot himself while it visually appears as though he's doing nothing. That's the damage he takes when his reticle is on screen, but his gun isn't. He didn't take enough damage with the shot to break his shield, so he shoots a couple more times en route to the armory vending machine to purchase a 25% damage boost upgrade for the volley gun, then refilling his salt and ammo at a different vending machine. Upgrades like this are why he's trying to pick up money throughout the run in addition to snacking at every opportunity. There's a couple enemies dicking around on the left up ahead waiting for a combat arena to start, so Prisoner preemptively blows them up, asks Elizabeth to lockpick the door to the actual arena, and throws down a couple traps to spawn camp some enemies that spawn back here. He starts the combat with a fire trap to the right, RPG to the left, and shocking the Patriot for bonus damage when he unloads with the volley gun. He cleans up the stragglers en route to an elevator he calls that he now has to wait a bit for, so he sets up his next death warp while looting some cash for future purchases. The elevator actually won't arrive until the end of the upcoming dialogue with Elizabeth, but by dying the moment Elizabeth starts talking, the dialogue gets skipped and the elevator warps to the bottom. Dying respawns him at the respawn point upstairs, and he'll run back down to the elevator, lowering his HP again on the way. He's going to kill himself again as he enters the elevator and does one of those dead body ragdoll clips again on the elevator's back wall. Dying in the elevator bypasses the respawn point upstairs and has you spawn where you died, but his body is out of bounds, so he spawns midair out of bounds and holds W until he sees his cursor to know he landed on some collision. He then does a huge drop down to some more out of bounds collision where he'll run and jump back inbounds at the entrance to the next area, the factory. He'll kill the turrets here as soon as they break his shield so that his shield can then regen for another boost. He grabs more volley gun ammo and plans to death warp through the gate up ahead, but his RPG isn't reloaded and he doesn't want to take the time to do that, so he sprints to slow down right before the gate for enemies to lower his shield for him to be able to die with just one volley gun shot. Inside the factory, he'll then boost past some enemies, grab some dinero, and run to an elevator for a pretty long dialogue, with the game taking away your weapons during the dialogue and him reloading them all afterwards. So that skip he did to get here to the factory, that skipped a lot. In the story, you typically go to the gunsmith Chen Lin only to learn he's been arrested and is being held at a local club. Only when you get there and fight your way to Chen Lin, he's already dead, beaten to death over his support for the Vox Populi. Elizabeth is able to open a tear to another reality though where Chen Lin isn't visible, which to Booker and Elizabeth can only mean one thing: Chen Lin's alive. No way he could still be dead but like 10 feet to the left. After Elizabeth says that they likely can't come back to this reality, they hop to that new reality where Chen Lin is alive so that they can get him to make the guns for the Vox Populi. Things ended up being pretty different in that new world, with Chen Lin indeed being alive, but his wife, who was originally Buddhist and of Chinese descent, now being white and has a shrine to Comstock. But all Chen Lin's tools got confiscated in this timeline, so we go track them down only to find they're too big to move. So Elizabeth opens a tear to another new reality, this one where the tools aren't in that room, which can only mean one thing: the tools are back at Chen Lin's. That jump brings us to the reality we're in now, and oh no, it turns out Chen Lin and his wife were gunned down by the authorities in this reality because he already supplied the Vox with weapons. In this new reality, Booker actually died already and became a martyr for the Vox Populi, who are openly engaging in warfare with Colombia. So yeah, we skip all of that. You're all caught up, and in skipping that, about 20 minutes is saved. In the story of the speedrun, Booker and Elizabeth never left their reality, meaning that Daisy must have decided to do a speedrun herself in acquiring weapons with some skip she found on her own. Anyway, when he finally gets his guns back in just a few moments, again, he'll reload them right away.
You just complicate the narrative.
After he blows up the enemies outside the elevator, he'll reset from checkpoint to exit the lingering combat state. This lets him ask Elizabeth to lockpick the door to the next arena immediately instead of having to wait a few seconds, with him looting one of the biggest money spots in the run during her lockpicking. This upcoming arena is why he reloaded all his guns during the elevator ride. Dude wants to be ready. He does this combat at 360 FPS because on higher FPSs, enemies do things faster, which can cause them to fall off the map and make the fight go faster, though this varies fight to fight. Some are better at lower frame rates. After placing traps for enemies who will hop off the skyline here, he rides the skyline as far as possible in the direction of a gunship spawn. He hops on the gunship as soon as he's able, nuking the riders with Vigors to lower his salt enough to cue Elizabeth to find and throw him more salts, but she won't throw until she has a moment to take cover. By keeping on the move, Elizabeth doesn't get the chance to take cover but stays queued to throw the salts. It's only after Prisoner does a dismount kill on this guy, places another trap, and pops some salts he finds on the ground that he stayed relatively still long enough for Elizabeth to enter cover and be ready to throw. Prisoner holds off on catching the salts, first clearing out any stray Vox and laying down a fire trap, waiting for a handyman to show up. He'll hit the handyman with crows just before the trap triggers, causing the trap to do bonus damage, and he'll finally catch the salts from Elizabeth the moment he starts a reload, which overlaps the animation so you don't have to sit through both separately. He does the same combo on the handyman again, crows and fire, then makes his way over to the start of a dialogue he has to wait through before boosting Elizabeth up into a vent. So at the start of this area, this universe's Daisy Fitzroy executed Fink, the second most powerful man in Colombia, the guy who kidnapped and killed Chen Lin, the guy who wants you to be racist during the raffle that we skipped with Raffle Skip. She wiped his blood on her face with some ominous strings playing, then ordered us killed too since our Booker being alive taints this universe's Booker's martyrdom. Daisy is now about to do a Gavroche to Fink's child, claiming the only way for freedom to ensue in Colombia is to, quote, pull the weed up from the root. You have to distract Daisy while she's doing this to progress, with Prisoner having used this dialogue time to check the other side of the arena for ammo. Prisoner will then watch the end of this scripted event, stopping in his tracks when instead, Elizabeth does a Gavroche to Daisy. Does Gavroching work there? I don't know. Elizabeth then stands over the body of the woman she stopped from killing the child of a racist, looks at the blood on her hands, and says,
I guess it runs in the family.
Pretty ironic.
Elizabeth.
After attempting to comfort Elizabeth, her rude ass will again shut the door on Booker, with Prisoner shooting at his feet to break his shield for the boost. After interacting with the door inside the airship to call for Elizabeth, he'll be forced into walking as he needs to interact with the First Lady airship controls to start a cutscene, so he jumps to move slightly faster and moves backwards for the Fleet Feet move speed. He also does the interact while facing back, which breaks Booker's neck during his animation at the start of the cutscene, letting Prisoner look back and see a floating ponytail off to the right. After Booker unowls himself, Elizabeth will emerge with her totemic haircut and outfit change, picking up the floating ponytail she finds and dropping it for dramatic effect.
Elizabeth.
The duo are now attempting to make their way to 78 North, 364 East, the famous 364th degree of the spheroid known as Earth. Their escape from Colombia is interrupted by Songbird though, showing back up to crash the First Lady airship to the ground. While this unfolds, I want to give a huge shout out to everyone who made this video possible, my patrons. Every other speedrun I cover is chosen by them, which is something you can participate in as well by supporting at patreon.com/tomatoanus for as little as $3 a month. That also gets your name in these credits, access to videos early, and updates on videos while they're in production. Supporting at the middle tier of $6 a month gets you access to all of that, plus a monthly Q&A livestream and my monthly Speedrun Explained retrospective series as they release, where I critique an old video of mine, trying to learn about what I could be doing to make better videos today. There's also the $9 tier, which gives you access to a series where after each video release, I walk you through my editing timeline to show you how I made the video. Supporting at all is entirely unnecessary though, seriously, no pressure, but that fact is what makes those of you who do support special, so truly and again, thank you. So after gaining control and exiting the airship, Prisoner will do a skip that's been around for a bit, though no one's ever really done in runs because of difficulty versus time save. But with a new wall zip discovery, piano skip is now faster and more reliable. He's able to jump back up on the airship stairs due to his high frame rate like earlier with raffle skip, then does 2 tricky jumps onto invisible collision in the wing. The wing has a bump on it he gets on top of while slip clipping, moving him off the ground and able to wall zip to the top of an invisible wall. He can then carefully walk atop the invisible wall and out of bounds to skip the convo at the piano with the duo from the rowboat at the start of the game. He'll hit a respawn trigger on the bridge ahead, then platform on railings and ledges to avoid updating his last solid ground position, which is the last place he touched the ground and where the game teleports him to when he falls off the map. Railings don't count as solid ground, and when you fall into the void too far from your last solid ground position, the game just kills you, which gives you your weapons back and is exactly why he's doing this. That way he can boost again. He'll cut the corner on this bridge here to skip a combat trigger, so enemies don't spawn and he can snack from the trash judgment free and double boost to the door up here, which he asks Elizabeth to lockpick. She won't finish picking until after the long dialogue ends, but by walking far enough away, she opens the door immediately to start following you instead. There's another section where you have to wait for a gondola after this building, so Prisoner books it to hit the trigger to call the gondola just outside the exit. While the gondola salaciously saunters its way down the cables, he loots a bunch of stuff for more money, even though he really does have enough by now, but force of habit. So there's some enemies riding on that stupid sexy gondola that you're supposed to fight before riding on up. Prisoner will do a pretty neat skip though, where he sets his last solid ground point to on this boarding platform, then jumps on the railing and moves to a lineup where he jumps off at a certain time. The enemies then teleport from the gondola to the ground, but they're off on the left side of the gondola while he teleports to the right side, so he can then stealth open the door. He'll fire a volley gun shot the instant Elizabeth physically opens the door, which aggroes the enemies, but Prisoner is able to run and start the gondola ride before the enemies do anything. Aggroing the enemies there causes a pretty interesting glitch. First is that Elizabeth doesn't have collision for a large portion of the ride, and Prisoner can stand inside her to make sure she's been flossing her teeth. Which, reminder, you should be flossing at least once a day. Don't let 3-day-old chicken rot between your teeth. Second, lockpick doors can be soft-locked shut if you start combat to interrupt Elizabeth after the lock falls off, but before the door opens. With this door specifically, there's a soft lock protection though, where if Elizabeth is interrupted at all, she'll open the door again after a certain amount of time. Prisoner aggroing the enemies caused an interruption in the game's eyes, so despite the door having opened, Elizabeth lockpicks it again behind the scenes and the door opens again mid-ride. This allows Prisoner to leave the cabin and position himself on the gondola's roof to jump off early. Also during this gondola ride, Elizabeth identifies the woman in the rowboat duo as Rosalind Lutece, the quantum physicist who invented the quantum tech that keeps Columbia floating, though Elizabeth mentions the duo of Rosalind and Robert disappeared several years ago. So Prisoner doesn't get his weapons back immediately since you get them when the gondola door is supposed to open, demonstrating just how far ahead he's able to travel before he was originally supposed to leave the gondola. Here he buys a couple Vigors that he passed, Undertow and Charge, along with an upgrade for Undertow. Charge lets you ram enemies at high speeds, and the upgraded Undertow lets you pull up to 3 enemies at once. Prisoner zooms through this area, grabbing an enemy with Undertow for something called a charge clip. By putting the enemy against the gate he needs to clip through, then hitting them with Bucking Bronco so they're floating, he can stand under them with his back against the wall, crouch, and use Charge to clip through. In 2024, a random person joined the BioShock Speedrun Discord server with a now non-existent clip of them clipping through the wall using Charge under some specific circumstances, with Prisoner replicating it and not much being made of it. In working on this video, Prisoner got some new ideas and worked with another runner named Reeve to reverse engineer a consistent way to clip based on Prisoner's memories of the original clip, thus Charge clipping was born. So in the story, Elizabeth and Booker are looking for a combination to a lock to progress, finding a code that feels eerily familiar here. They've realized they physically cannot escape Columbia while Songbird is still around, so they're making their way to Comstock's HQ, Comstock House, to find a way to control the bird. But first, the bird provides the two with an Alien moment, like from that movie, Alien, and that game, Alien Isolation. While they hold their breath so Songbird don't hear them, and while we're kinda on the topic of discoveries in this game, Prisoner wanted to make sure we included a big shout out to Jarko. This game and run wouldn't be anywhere near as fast without all his contributions. Just scrolling through his YouTube channel, you'll see strats for this game and others posted spanning the last decade. Truly incredible stuff. Shout out Jarko. After Booker and Elizabeth stop holding their breath, we have another short cutscene where Elizabeth makes Booker promise that should she fall into Comstock's hands, Booker needs to kill Elizabeth before Comstock can use her as a weapon. Why does killing someone to prevent them from becoming evil sound familiar? Where'd you get that idea, Elizabeth?
I will stop him.
That is an oath you cannot keep. But promise me that if it comes to it, you will not let him take me back.
It won't come to that.
After this brief cutscene, we'll then get to see Prisoner whip out his third arm to interact with the elevator while he takes out his gun with his two other hands. No, not that third arm. Get your mind out of the gutter. He has a bit of an elevator ride down here with the Vox blowing it up at the end, but Prisoner is omniscient and knows what's coming, so he beats them to the punch by intentionally dying. This respawns him on the ground outside the elevator, refilling his health and ammo, and allows him to grab some resources down there. He still has to wait for the Vox to blow up the elevator though before he can hop on the skyline. On the balcony ahead, he'll do another charge clip where, again, he grabs an enemy, pins them against the wall, broncos them so they float, crouches under with his back to the wall, and charges to clip out. He hits a loading zone and drops into the next area, skipping a pretty long fight and saving about 1.5 to 2 minutes. He then buys the final upgrades of the run, one each for the volley gun's clip size and damage. This second damage upgrade is pretty impactful. Your shield breaks in just one shot with it, and you don't lose much health in doing so. He's pretty much running straight to the end of the level now, jumping at the end of his boost to carry that momentum a little farther, and checking each corpse's pockets for something to nosh on. The end of the level is locked behind a gate in the entry of Comstock House, so he's going to do a gate skip to make downtown Emporia the cleanest example of running straight from the start to end of a mission in the entire run. This skip is consecutive slip clips with him aiming down sights with the RPG to reduce his field of view and slightly increase his FPS so he clips a little faster. Once through the second wall, he'll have saved about 9 to 10 minutes from not having to do downtown Emporia. As soon as he loads in, he'll do Songbird skip to skip a cutscene and save over 90 seconds. This is where he gets Hill Runner's hack going and jumps off the giant cable as far forward as he can to hit the trigger that loads the next area. He died here, which doesn't always happen but is ideal since it of course refills his health and ammo. In the skipped cutscene, Elizabeth gives herself up to Songbird to save Booker's life, with Booker now arriving at Comstock House proper, trying to find and save Elizabeth. Here, Prisoner really roleplays Booker's concern for Elizabeth, sprinting past all the lore of what happened to Elizabeth in another universe where Booker never came back to save her. He'll then reset from checkpoint before a tear up here, and after loading back in and entering the next room, he'll do charge skip. No, not charge clip, charge skip. This is where he'll jump and charge a turret a few floors up, hitting a loading zone and skipping a fight, some dialogue, some downtime, and a slow elevator ride, saving about 1:20. So Elizabeth was supposed to get taken away during the Songbird cutscene, but because she didn't, she's still following Booker, and it's actually very easy for her to fall out of bounds as areas deload. This would cause big problems later, I'll explain when we get there, but by resetting in a couple key spots, her AI becomes less active and prefers to teleport behind you instead of running, so she's less likely to fall out of bounds when areas deload. With all this double upgraded volley gun boosting, his health has been slowly whittled down, which is great since there's another death warp coming up soon. As he runs to a lever he has to pull, his current objective at the top of the screen cycles through a bunch of outstanding objectives he's skipped. After this lever and animation of looking at the screen, his current objective finally hits the true current objective of rescuing Elizabeth, only for him to beeline it to the elevator back to the first floor and reset from checkpoint to again help Elizabeth not get lost, resetting all the cycling objectives on top of the screen in the process. He blows himself up when he loads into Death Warp straight down to the first floor and skip the elevator ride, which ultimately doesn't save too much time since there's still a fair bit of waiting. You see, he has to intentionally slow down here and wait for the Lutesses to spawn in. If he doesn't, then their dialogue never plays, so instead he's got to sit here and wait for them to finish spouting their nonsense.
What is it? Why?
After the Lutesses disappear, Prisoner will boost up to the silhouette ahead to speak with an older version of Elizabeth, who pulls Booker into her future reality to show what will happen if Booker fails to stop Comstock from forcibly indoctrinating Elizabeth. Prisoner turns around real quick to show our Elizabeth still with us though, still wearing her jacket and everything. Her jacket will be important soon. Remember, she's wearing the jacket. During this dialogue, old Elizabeth hands over a note for our Elizabeth on how to prevent this future from coming to pass. Don't know why she can't just hand it to Elizabeth herself. I mean, she's right there. Guess she stays rude forever. When he grabs the note from old Elizabeth, Prisoner will make sure that his camera is positioned pretty much exactly where the game would force it to if he wasn't looking straight ahead. The game correcting the camera takes time and delays the interaction, with it being particularly egregious if you look really far away. This kind of positioning is something Prisoner does for pretty much every interaction in the run, but it's most important in this level.
The seed of the prophet shall sit the throne and drown in flame the mountains of man. Say what you will about Comstock. He was a hell of a fortune teller. Wasn't the torture that broke me. Wasn't the indoctrination. It was time. Time rots everything, Booker. Even hope.
I was coming.
Songbird. He always stops you.
Yes, but I would find a way.
No. It's too late for me. I brought you here for your sake. Yours and hers. Here.
What is this?
It's for her. She'll know how to read it.
What does it say?
It's advice.
After the cutscene, Prisoner is loaded into the next area and he starts boosting to the operating room where Comstock's procedure on Elizabeth is underway. Our jacket Elizabeth is still kind of following us, and Prisoner needs to pull 2 levers to stop an unjacketed Elizabeth from getting operated on. The building will start shaking after the second lever, which slows you down as you're supposed to walk back down to the unjacketed Elizabeth. Rather than jump a lot to mitigate the slowed walking like he did earlier, he'll instead do a charge clip to drop down right next to the operating room. This saves 2 to 3 seconds compared to the most optimal jumping you could otherwise do. You might be asking why he can't just clip to the elevator and end the level here, or why he didn't clip straight to old Elizabeth in the previous area, or why he hasn't just gone out of bounds in every level and ran to the end. This game is heavily scripted in some levels, and like in this area, there are triggers you have to hit to actually progress the game, and blowing past them just soft locks you. So gotta hit all the triggers, dem's the rules. He then waits for the tear to fully shut before walking forward to prevent the area from deloading. When he finally gets to Elizabeth, he unplugs her from the Matrix, and let's now talk about why I've been calling so much attention to Elizabeth's jacket. This version without the jacket is a different model than the other Elizabeth, and partway through the cutscene, Booker will look down and the game swaps out the unjacketed model for the one with the jacket. The model with the jacket is the one who's been shadowing us this whole time, with the dedicated resets to make sure she stays following. Without the resets, there's a really good chance she falls out of bounds at some point and just keeps falling. When the game goes to swap the models during this cutscene then, it can't find the jacketed model because she's so far away, and you end up having to wait around 50 extra seconds for the cutscene dialogue to end and the door to unlock. Prisoner plays with a higher than default field of view, meaning that you can actually see the models swap if you watch the bottom of Elizabeth's skirt when Booker looks down in about 15 seconds.
You saw what he turns me into. I will not allow that.
And so what, you're going to kill him?
Is this where you start moralizing, Booker?
Alright, watch the top left corner for the model swap, and now. In this cutscene, Booker handed over the note old Elizabeth gave him, with our Elizabeth resolving that they must find and kill Comstock to prevent him from turning Elizabeth into old Elizabeth and stop that New York future from coming to pass. He's then just a few boosts away from the final elevator of Comstock House, with him grabbing some salts on a couch in the process. The elevator will lead him to the Hand of the Prophet, the penultimate split of the run, where there's a handful of combat sequences. Also, he shoots the ground once while waiting for Elizabeth to lockpick the elevator, setting his health up for another death warp.
This doesn't make any sense. Everything here is a cipher that I understand except for this symbol. It's a cage. Did she say anything about this?
No.
So the first combat sequence starts right outside, with Elizabeth needing to pick a lock first. Prisoner scouts which bodies have food on them, then kills himself the instant she puts the lockpick in the lock. This instantly opens the door, skipping having to wait through a really long dialogue for it to open, with the dialogue still playing in the background as he eats the food he scouted and storms outside. To open the fight, he has to kill a few enemies in a specific order, starting with this Patriot he hentai slaps and volley guns 4 times, then charging over to another Patriot that spawned where he rinses and repeats. He then kills a specific soldier who has a volley gun next. Killing the 2 Patriots and that dude in order makes the first gunship spawn and fly in about 20 seconds sooner, with Prisoner refilling his resources here. When clearing the gunship, you need to have the enemies physically removed from the ship in order to progress, not necessarily die, so Prisoner places an RPG shot to send them all flying off. We have to take the gunship to the next locale, with there being no real rush since after pulling the lever, you still have to wait for the gunship to dock first. This is the first interlude of the combat sequence, where as they fly to Comstock's airship, Elizabeth ends up asking Booker a familiar question.
Do you think it's possible to redeem the kind of things that we've done?
Redeem? I don't see much use in that.
Booker, are you afraid of God?
No. I'm afraid of you.
The first of Comstock's forces who fly out to greet us is a gunship that Prisoner is going to hop to, where he'll cover the enemies in his hot detonation. There's an interesting glitch when he does that though, where you get thrown off the hook after shooting there. Depending on where you land when thrown off, you can potentially save some time. If you land on the deck of the ship, then you have to hop back down to your gunship via hook, but if you're lucky and land on the railing, well, your last solid ground position is back on our own gunship, and Prisoner can just fall off into the void to warp back to it. There's then 2 balloon boys who come flying in, with Prisoner doing to them what I would have done had I lived in Fort Collins, Colorado on October 15th, 2009.
Another gunship on the left.
There's an RPG enemy on the next gunship that flies in, whom Prisoner will use Bucking Bronco on to lift in air for more damage. There's a Vox Populi gunship that flies in and fights the second Comstock gunship over here, which there's nothing you can do to speed up. All Prisoner can really do is chill around on his gunship with Elizabeth, waiting about 30 seconds for the next gunship he has to clear to fly up on his starboard. There are 6 enemies on this upcoming ship, and Prisoner will use Undertow to pull a couple enemies off the ship and immediately throw them into the void to go hit the death plane. He optimizes this by making sure that one of the enemies he throws is the one with an RPG. He has more health, so it's faster to throw him to the death plane and clean up the leftovers with 1 volley gun shot, which takes the same amount of time as Mr. RPG dying. There's 3 more balloon boys who fly in now, with the enemy actually being called mosquitoes, and after clearing them, Prisoner has 1 more gunship to clear out in this sequence. He'll leap to a hook on the ship and just hang there, using his RPG to hopefully kill all the enemies in 1 shot. Here it ended up taking 2 shots though, which isn't too bad. Sometimes you can get really unlucky and have to ring around the rosy a bit to find and clear them out. So just ahead through the clouds is Comstock's Zeppelin, Hand of the Prophet. This is where we'll be confronting Comstock and things will begin to come to a head narratively. Once the gunship docks, Prisoner's going to do a glitch he referred to as Bomb Boost that'll launch him up out of bounds, where he can do an elevator to skip some combat, dialogue, and a bunch of downtime in the bottom half of the ship and save about 2 minutes. Prisoner isn't 100% sure how Bomb Boost works, though he believes it's similar in concept to Cargo Boost earlier, where he'll kinda get stuck in some collision, leading to some weird speeds. From the hook of the gunship, he aims his leap right at the base of this bomb, placing him in a small gap where the bomb is resting, which gets him stuck, but with a well-timed jump, he gets launched up a floor out of bounds. From here, he'll jump up on the ship's wing, then onto a ledge where he'll elevator up the ship's interior. At the top, he can run and hop onto a skyline that snakes through this unloaded area, which is actually a skyline that belongs to the level he's about to load into, and using this skyline activates all the other skylines, so he can ride one to go to the proper end of this area. Loading into the engineering deck delineates the top and bottom halves of the ship, with Prisoner now being in the bottom of the top half. He's making his way straight to Comstock, first hopping on this skyline, swinging back and forth like the people who play dead on zip lines at children action parks. He got unlucky with a handyman pushing him to the right here, derailing his movement and causing him to nearly die to enemies ahead. Ultimately, he's fine as he hops on this skyline that he leapfrogs ahead on to reach the confrontation with Comstock a little sooner. We now have a few important dialogue sections here that are unfortunately unskippable. Not because you couldn't feasibly skip this area physically, there's a way to get into the next area early. Rather, we need to interact with the ship's wheel to progress after we talk to Comstock, and the wheel won't spawn if you skip these dialogues. So unless you find a way to bypass the final fight entirely, which the ship's wheel is required to trigger, then there's no way to skip this. While this dialogue gets going, Prisoner shoots the ground to really make sure that he's down to 1 HP since he'll be doing a death warp after the second dialogue. In this first dialogue, Booker and Elizabeth put 2 and 2 together to realize Comstock has been dampening Elizabeth's power with a tool called a siphon, which prevents her from creating new tears like she used to be able to as a child. Straight up Elsa'd her ass. We then have the second dialogue/cutscene, the confrontation with Comstock, which ultimately leads to Booker and Elizabeth having more questions than answers.
And him.
We're walking into a trap.
I need to do this.
Come here, child. Oh, come on, I don't bite. My, oh my, how you have grown.
Tell me, what am I?
Look at you, child. You're
Hey,
a mess.
let go of her.
Elizabeth, everything I've done to keep you safe.
Safe from what?
Seed of the prophet shall sit the throne and drown in flame the mountains of man. But the archangel revealed something else. Beware, prophet. Beware the false shepherd Booker DeWitt, for he shall be as a wall between her and destiny.
Why?
DeWitt, I'm a fool. I've sent mighty armies to stop you. I've rained fire on you from above. I did all of that to keep you from her, when all I needed was to tell her the truth. Ask him, child. Ask him what happened to your finger. Ask DeWitt.
She's your daughter, you son of a bitch! And you abandoned her! Was it worth it? Huh? Did you get what you wanted?
Booker.
Tell me!
Booker!
Tell me!
It is finished.
Nothing is finished!
Booker.
You locked her up for her whole life!
Booker.
You cut off her finger, and you put it on me!
Booker, stop it! You killed him.
So Comstock was pretty much like, why did I try to fight you when all I have to do is tell Elizabeth you're hiding a secret? But Booker's like, grr, I don't remember any secrets, so I'm gonna drown you in 10 seconds flat since this is a speedrun. There's a bunch more dialogue here that Prisoner is going to skip as soon as he's given his weapons back by doing a death warp into the ship's bridge. There's no respawn point nearby since this is pretty much a strictly cutscene area, so you respawn in the spot where your body lies, so he wakes up in the bridge in front of the ship's wheel, which he interacts with to start another cutscene. Elizabeth is trying to decipher a hidden message in the note old Elizabeth gave her when the Vox Populi rear their heads, saying, "We're still here too," waiting for this cutscene to end so the final combat encounter of the run can begin.
Board us.
You ain't gonna place your daughter on the throne. We're gonna place her in a grave.
What are you doing?
We have to
Sing to who? Elizabeth, stop it!
C-A-G-E. It's not a word, Booker. It's a song. Protect me, will you do it? Will you do this?
With Songbird on our side, it's time to clear out the Vox Populi, with the opening of this fight being really scripted. You don't actually gain control of Songbird until after a pop-up, and if you clear the first gunship too quickly, the next gunship spawn too fast for you to kill them quick with Songbird, which ultimately delays the spawn of 2 other ships later. Prisoner holds onto some enemies with Undertow until long enough has passed to delay the next gunship until he can use Songbird. He then immediately turns to direct Songbird at one of the 2 gunships that spawned while he uses Undertow to clean up the other gunship. There's another wave of 3 gunships that come in now, though Undertow makes it easy to mop up any enemies on each ship. Plus, this part is made slightly simpler by the fact that Prisoner spawn camping that one gunship with Songbird causes an RPG enemy to not spawn on one of these gunships. This leads to the final segment of this fight and the last stretch of combat in the run. There are 3 Vox Populi Zeppelins that will spawn over the next 2 minutes or so, with destroying them being the main objective here. To complicate things, there's of course a bunch of enemies joining the fight during this stretch. Songbird is coming off cooldown now, with Prisoner using it to destroy the first Zeppelin the moment it's interactable. Taking down the Zeppelins with Songbird is a lot faster than taking one down manually, though due to Songbird's long cooldown, he will have to take down the second by hand. There's a sizable wave of Vox soldiers and Patriots that spawn on the bow of the deck while Prisoner waits for the second Zeppelin. Undertow combined with a vantage point makes this pretty trivial though, with Prisoner able to collect enemies, group them up, and bring them near for a spanking with the volley gun. He's about out of uses for his RPG that's treated him well for so long, so he swaps it out for a crank gun. The next Zeppelin is approaching our ship from the bow starboard side, so he begins making his way that direction, picking up some resources while en route. While he waits on the skyline, he cranks it all over 2 turrets because he's waiting to land on the Zeppelin anyway, so may as well spray some turrets. Once on the Zeppelin, taking it down manually is pretty simple, with him just boosting towards the engine, jumping at the end of his boost of course, using charge to close the gap, then sabotaging the engine. He grabs some more volley gun ammo on his way out, and by the time he finishes his mammoth leap back down to the hand of the Prophet, Songbird will be just coming off cooldown, ready for him to destroy the last Zeppelin. Only for Elizabeth to want Booker to catch something right as Prisoner was going to interact with the Zeppelin. With the final Zeppelin falling apart, all that's left to do is clean up the remaining stragglers, with the fight actually ending once all the Zeppelins despawn. Prisoner is going to comb the deck into any gunships that fly up of enemies before making his way to the bow to progress the story. The dialogue here will begin once we fly within range of Elizabeth's former home, Monument Tower, though it's a bit random when it will actually spawn in. Sometimes it's loaded in immediately, sometimes you can lose up to 15 seconds waiting for it to load in. This time Prisoner lost around 3 or 4 extra seconds here. It's a pretty annoying time loss, especially so late into the run. This begins the long narrative sequence to wrap up the game, which starts with Booker using Songbird to destroy Elizabeth's tower, which destroys the siphon, limiting her powers in the process, and pretty much gives her full access to the multiverse.
It's the only way we'll find the truth. About my finger, Comstock, everything.
Tear it down. Tear it all down.
And what's the first thing she does with this power? She stops Songbird from ejaculating.
I lost control. He's coming.
No, he isn't.
Where is he? Where is he? Elizabeth, I'm sorry. What is this place? Elizabeth?
It's a doorway. One of many.
Alright, wanted to let that play out at least a bit. The Rapture teleport is truly iconic. So we're all done with combat in the run. It's strictly story stuff from here on out. A lot of walking from one point to another to watch a cutscene, lots of plot to digest. There's still a couple skips though, we're not yet done with speed tech. So in the story, with Elizabeth's newfound access to all realities, she sees the full picture and is taking an unknowing Booker on an epiphany tour. At the end of this ride in the bathysphere, we'll arrive at a lighthouse, the motif of the series that is about to take on a whole new meaning.
City at the bottom of the ocean. Ridiculous.
Look at that. Thousands of doors. Opening all at once. My God, they're beautiful.
The stars?
Come on. Come on, it's this way. Come on.
After Elizabeth finally opens the lighthouse door, we'll be greeted by a sort of world between worlds. Many lighthouses, all leading to different universes. Rather than take off to the left towards the next lighthouse, there's an invisible wall surrounding the railing with Prisoner giving it the old slip and clip to get on top. This lets him get moving early and skip a dialogue trigger that would leave Booker and Elizabeth talking past the point he reaches the door to the next cutscene, so he'd be standing there waiting for it to wrap up. Getting moving early and skipping the dialogue trigger like this lets him interact with the next lighthouse right when he gets there instead of waiting, saving about 30 seconds. Since he's playing at a high FPS, he gets something here called an air glide, where you walk off ledges like you're in a Looney Tune, only dropping after a random amount of time. He also walks backwards and jumps once he's back on solid ground. The jumping, if you remember from the start of the run, is slightly faster than the walking speed, and the walking backwards is because he still has fleet feet equipped, which increases his walking speed back and sideways. Here he does another wall zip, this time to skip around an invisible wall blocking you from moving forward yet. Off in the distance, you can actually see Elizabeth pulling off the same skip, with Prisoner slowing down to show it off. Probably just didn't want to admit he's bad at walking backwards. There's a branch in the path here to two different lighthouses, with the same baptism sequence playing regardless of your choice. Prisoner jumps into the interact of this nearby lighthouse's door and holds S during the interaction, which for some reason causes the area and sequence inside to deload, letting him walk out of the lighthouse and back it up like a Tonka truck to the other lighthouse. When he's halfway to the second lighthouse, he's going to turn around to face it, and like I just mentioned, this lighthouse contains the same baptism sequence, where you normally stand around for a while before being able to interact with the preacher. As long as he does this deload and turns around to face the lighthouse as he approaches, he'll be able to interact with the preacher without the delay, saving about 12 seconds overall. We then get to relive the memory of Booker not going through with the baptism after he returned from the Wounded Knee massacre. Dude didn't want to take that chance to come clean before the full detailed explanation with a stupid amount of evidence comes out.
No, I don't want to. Yes.
Jesus, wash this man clean. Father, make him
Stop
born
it.
again. Lord,
Stop it.
what are you doing?
Get off me! Get off!
Son!
You didn't go through with
You
it.
think a dunk in the river's gonna change the things I've done? Let's get out of here. Hey, these doors of yours, they're all tears, right? Well, open one up. Open one up to Paris. I want to be shut of all this.
Not until we find Comstock.
Comstock's dead!
No. He was here.
After Elizabeth gives a dodgy as hell answer about Comstock having been here because, like, Booker drowned him for 10 whole seconds, and people don't just come back from that. Prisoner enters the next dialogue sequence where there's a quick overlap in dialogue.
One of my dads.
This happens randomly at high frame rates. So here we are in another of Booker's memories, an earlier memory than Booker initially believes. The actual gameplay in this part is pretty simple. Just interact with baby ASAP and get rid of baby ASAP.
There was no baby, and if there was, I sure as hell would.
There have been instances where you can interact with Robert Lutece immediately to rid yourself of the baby and save about 13 seconds, which seems to be more likely if you're playing at excessive FPSs, like over 1400, though it's still very uncommon. And on that note of high FPSs, Prisoner gets another dialogue overlap skip when Booker hands over the baby to Robert Lutece to wipe away his debts, saving a few seconds.
How do you know all this?
I can see all the doors, and what's behind all the doors. And behind one of them, I see him.
Comstock. What choice do I have?
Mr. Comstock washes you of all your sins.
Booker's having a hard time with re-experiencing these memories, especially these ones he's forgotten. After Booker doesn't help Roe again, Prisoner is going to again just run backwards to the next cutscene, this one of another memory he had forgotten. Booker keeps asking Elizabeth why they can't just go to Paris now that Comstock is dead, but Elizabeth persists in showing him these memories, insistent that their job isn't done yet, not until Comstock never existed. But she's being coy about the whole thing.
Comstock's dead. We can just go on with our lives. You don't need
Dead?
to...
You mean like Chenlin? Like Lady Comstock? No. He is alive in a million worlds. It's not over because the Prophet is dead. It will only be over when he never even lived in the first place.
The cutscene that's gonna happen after interacting with Comstock is actually supposed to be in slow motion, but because he's playing at 600 FPS, it's a lot faster. Hey, have I mentioned yet that a big part of Elizabeth's character is that her right pinky is missing?
Down the machine! No! Shut it down! Shut down the machine now! Do it!
Give me back my daughter! No!
So yeah, Booker is Elizabeth's dad. Using the universe-hopping Rosalind and Robert Lutece to foster the deal, Comstock bought Elizabeth/Anna so he could have an heir, with her pinky being severed and left in a different universe, which is what leads to her preternatural abilities. Now knowing what Comstock has taken from him, Booker's all aboard the "let's kill Comstock when he was born" train. Screw Paris. He has a bit more cutscene here before he'll be back at the lighthouse.
A chance for us to live together.
I told you it would work.
We already know it works. The question is, will he?
Anna. So sorry, Anna.
You suppose he branded himself as some sort of penance?
Should have.
Don't see the point. What's done is done. What's done will be done. I suppose the brand is his hair shirt, as he is ours.
Wipe away the debt. Bring us the girl. Wipe away the debt.
See? He's starting to put his story together.
Wipe away.
You're quite fond of this theory of yours.
He's manufacturing new memories from his old ones.
Well, the brain adapts.
I should know. I lived it.
Booker, wake up. Booker, wake up. This is where it started.
I sold you. I sold you.
To your credit, you did try to weasel out of the deal.
This is all Comstock's fault. What if I went back? Killed him before he did any of this?
Things get set in motion.
How would one know how far back to go?
That's the only way to do it. Go back to when he was born, and I'll smother the son of a bitch in his crib.
Once Prisoner interacts with the lighthouse door, the run will officially end and the final cutscene will begin. Gotta walk backwards there first though, with him getting stuck in the process. Told ya, bad at walking backwards.
Booker, are you sure?
Worth bringing up that our Elizabeth doesn't have a pendant on her choker. In a normal playthrough, this is super important to this cutscene because when Elizabeth shows up without a pendant, it's supposed to be this gasp-inducing moment, but in the speedrun, it just feels like Booker's kinda tripping.
Why are we back here?
This isn't the same place, Booker.
Of course it is. I remember.
Are you ready to leave behind all
You're not.
Until it immediately becomes clear he's not tripping as more Elizabeths fill the frame. So yeah, turns out that in the universes where Booker goes through with the baptism, he ends up becoming Comstock, which leads to Columbia and everything. He needed a blood heir, but because of the Lutece's experiments, his sperm kinda sucks, so he had to steal his child from another universe, which is where Anna/Elizabeth and Booker, who turned down the baptism, came in. But now Booker lets Elizabeth drown him at the baptism so that Comstock is never born. I've got a question though. This is a 1912 Booker getting drowned, right? Not an 1891 Booker? So how does drowning this Booker make there be no Comstocks ever? You'd have to actually go back in time and drown Booker then, right? And even then, aren't there infinite multiverses branching off this Booker's decisions right now? Isn't there a universe where Booker backed out from going through that final lighthouse door and he lives on? Wouldn't this require an eradication of every Booker across every timeline at or before 1891? I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking this because I recently read the book Dark Matter, which covers a very similar topic, but that's like the book's whole deal. It allows for more questions to be explored on the subject, while this game's focus is on telling a story that features this infinite reality stuff as opposed to being entirely centered around it. Ignore the irony of me saying that while this game's name is, you know, BioShock Infinite. Anyway, if you've made it to the end of this video, thank you so much on behalf of both myself and Prisoner. And of course, I'd like to give a huge shout out and thank you to Prisoner for helping make this video. Dude is seriously incredible at speedrunning this game, holding every major record for it, but he was even more incredible to work with. We originally chatted 4 years ago about the possibility of making this video together, and after I kicked the can down the road for a few years, not wanting to cover a run this long, we reconnected and he was still super down to work together. His impact on the script and editing of this video cannot be understated, and I cannot recommend enough you check out his channel if you're itching for a backlog of BioShock speedruns. So again, thank you Prisoner for helping make this video. Last but not least, shout out to everyone in the tomatoanus Discord server. It's a super chill, welcoming, and supportive place, and that's solely because of the folks who make it up. So yeah, you're all pretty cool in my book. Anyway, that's all for this video. This was an any% HRH mod speedrun of BioShock Infinite. I've been tomatoanus, and I hope you have an above average day.